The first details on the next upcoming update to Battlefield 5, discussion and debate surrounding the newly introduced grind game mode as well as Commando Carbine, and of course some only in Battlefield moments. This is your week on the Battlefield. Welcome to this episode of This Week on the Battlefield, the show where we cover news, updates, the community, and so much more, all around the Battlefield franchise. In this episode then, in what turned out to be another quiet week for Battlefield 5 news, we have of course the first specifics on the next patch coming to Battlefield 5 to talk about. Alongside that, we have the new game mode and weapon introduced this week, as well as of course some only in Battlefield moments for you guys to enjoy. In terms of new content then, this week of course we got the temporary game mode grind and we got the Commando Carbine as addition to the medic class weaponry. What is interesting to know about grind is that DICE actually differentiates between this kind of game mode and some of the others that they've added temporarily in the past. So whereas for example Squad Conquest and Rush were temporary game modes with the idea of if they're popular they would eventually return, they would evolve and possibly even get additional maps added to them, game modes such as the current one, Grind, or the still yet to come Fortress, are actually never meant to become larger parts of the Battlefield franchise and will remain as, I guess you could say, timed exclusives, with it being highly unlikely that any additions, changes, or fixes are added to those modes, and they should basically disappear into nothingness after a while once more. Besides then the new game mode and the new Commando Carbine weapon, we have the return of duos this week to Firestorm, this time supposedly permanently. So if you're a big fan of Firestorm and specifically duos, rejoice, that mode is sticking around permanently now. In terms of what to expect next week, we have Squad Conquest, as previously mentioned in last week's episode, returning this coming Thursday, as well as the introduction of a new LMG with the LS26, something I am personally looking forward to quite a lot. Then of course in terms of the next update, while the specific release date or even week is yet to be fully set, what we do know is that it's going through certification next week, so the update as far as DICE is concerned is finished and ready to publish, meaning that once it has been certified, it will of course be released in due time, which means either towards the end of next week or if things don't go ideally, most likely the week after that. In terms of the changes to expect, of course we don't have full patch notes just yet, but we do know that there's going to be changes for all of the available 3 Battlefield 5 modes, if you so will, Combined Arms, the base game multiplayer, and Firestorm as well. In terms of specifics, there's only a couple of things that the DICE developers have so far announced. Amongst them, the reworking of landing animations to allow players to have a little bit more control over where they land, how they land, and how fast they get back up again, as well as in terms of the heavy landing animations, a significant decrease to the amount of time they take to play out. In other words, you fall down somewhere, you take a bit of fall damage, you should be up and ready to fight a lot faster after the coming update than currently is the case. Lastly, and something I'm personally looking forward to, a change we had back in Battlefield 1 as well, is the introduction of the camera shake slider, allowing those of us who like a more cinematic experience to just basically have our screen shaking all over the place every time something blows up, and those of us who prefer a little bit more of a, I guess you could say, technical clean look, we're going to be able to reduce the amount of camera shake going on in the game to better help us keep our crosshairs on target. In terms of community discussion this week, of course, it's been all around both the grind game mode and the newly introduced Commando Carbine. Whereas I'm not a big fan of either of those, I do think DICE can do a little bit better in terms of implementing them. Whereas I've never been a massive fan of the kind of grind-ish type game mode, I did actually enjoy that type of experience back in Battlefield 4 days, where I was a big fan of the 64-player Rush Mayhem experience that you could get there on the right servers. But in terms of Battlefield 5, because I find that the game mode truly highlights and exacerbates some of the key problems with Battlefield 5, things like the MMG camping meta, visibility issues, especially important when you're rounding corners and you know there's going to be enemies there, but you quickly need to see and react to where they are, but when it's so difficult to actually see them, you can't. You just end up getting hit in the face. And of course, the one-hit explosive spam with gadgets such as the grenade launchers, Piat, and AT grenade launcher, all in all make grind even less enjoyable than it could be, and in my opinion, it's also why I don't like it here in Battlefield 5, but did in past iterations of the Battlefield franchise. In terms of the Commando Carbine, some players, either by use of way above average skill and accuracy and others by use of essentially luck and flanking, will be able to make the weapon work. Absolutely, there's no doubt about that. Overall, objectively speaking, it's definitely significantly worse than I think most of us were expecting, and pretty much any other primary weapon out there be that for the medic class or be that for other classes available. The silencer doesn't really help too much in that sense. If you want my full thoughts on this weapon, feel free to check out my weapon review. I'll have it linked down below in the description and of course in the info card above. But with that, we come to the only Battlefield moment, and we start off this week with a great Commando Carbine Battlefield 4 Mars leg comparison clip that I found over on the good old Battlefield 5's Reddit, showing exactly what flanking and amazing accuracy actually means when paired with a weapon such as the Commando Carbine. Absolutely brilliant stuff, this. Next up, we have two classic Panzerfaust aircraft takedowns. The first by eyedrop users, probably the luckiest shot I've actually seen somebody take in Battlefield 5, and the second by average Samson, a little bit more skill involved in leading this one on that helicopter. And the last of our clips in this week's episode then is by far my personal favorite, Mr. Soul Reaper going on a flank, picking up 7 kills, all of them consecutively hit, 100% accuracy with the throwing knives, not missing a single shot. Absolutely brilliant, absolutely satisfying. But coming to the end of this week's episode then, if you enjoyed the show, found it interesting or entertaining, don't forget to give it a thumbs up, share it, and of course hit me up with your feedback, suggestions and opinions down below in the comments or over on Twitter. With that being said, however, I'd like to thank you very much for watching, and hope to see you in the next episode of This Week on the Battlefield.